but on an analytical point of view, we don't know what's in the ground because we haven't disinterred anything.
Agreed.
The timing is suspect, as AJ points out, because all of a sudden we have this fuel on a fire that didn't even exist 6 weeks ago that's threatening to undermine one of the great things about being Canadian, and that's our ability to celebrate the fact that we are Canadian and practice all that compassion you so eloquently laid out for us. So I think there's a lot of different facets to this, and what I'm worried about is the mainstream media doing nothing but a flyby shooting on it. It makes it today and disappears, but it's going to take a long time before all the facts come out. And will the media give it the time it needs to mature so we get all the accurate information to be able to decide what went on, who's responsible, and if anybody's responsible, bring them to justice and make them answer for their crimes if we can, if they're still alive. If not, okay, but we have to do what we can to try to set this right. Because if this is the way it looks, then you're absolutely right. We should be horrified. But I think there's a lot of things going on in this particular witch's brew that are more than meets the eye. And the fact that all of a sudden we have another even bigger one in Saskatchewan, again, if they haven't disinterred anybody in Kamloops, you can bet they haven't disinterred anything in Saskatchewan.
Right. No, for sure they haven't.
They haven't done that.
Yeah, for sure they haven't.
So why are they saying there could be up to 600 bodies? First of all, why would you say could be until you know?
Well,
why would you say, well, there's something interesting in the ground we have to investigate, and then bring in the machinery and the sophisticated scientific equipment to be able to process this information so we know what we're dealing with?
Exactly. Well, we should be doing that anyway,
right, but in the process, in the short term, we're dragging our national character through the mud and embarrassing ourselves on the world stage, because this is an international story. Make no mistake about it. They've been calling for the Pope to be, and you know what? Now looking back on it, I'm glad the Pope didn't apologize yet, because we don't know what's going on yet. So what's he supposed to apologize for?
Well, yes, and that's exactly my point. My point is we need to be patient, and we need to gather all of the facts. And the first step is that if, in fact, there are a large number of bodies that are in the ground at this former residential school in Kamloops, first, let's disinter the bodies. Let's find out. Let's see if we can determine how they died. Let's identify. Let's identify those that can be identified. Let's actually verify the number of children who have been buried there. Okay, and I mean that's the responsible thing to do, not to jump to conclusions. And then, as I said, even jumping to conclusions, though, okay, my approach to this is, my take on this is that rather than being ashamed of being a Canadian, I think that you should be proud to be a member of a country that is not afraid to look at past injustices that may have occurred in this country with a completely open mind and look at these things squarely the way they are. But let's make sure we're looking at them squarely the way they are. And this notion that somehow or other we should be ashamed of Canada because something bad happened. Look, whatever happened here happened in the past. None of us are responsible for this. None of us. None of us in this country are personally responsible for any of the things that happened in these residential schools, along the lines of what we're talking about here. So whatever
happened
happened 100 years ago.
If they can make us feel ashamed and responsible for this, then the doors are open to make us feel ashamed and responsible for anything.
Well, and
take it back as far as you want to go.
Well, this is the problem, Nick. That what you've identified is exactly the problem. Is that there is such a desire to jump on the victim bandwagon.
Mm-hmm.
And because why? I think that there's something deeply psychological about it. But it's also the way that you get, recognition and benefits. I'm sorry. I know people are going to be very upset that I've just said that, because they're going to go, well, you think that we're complaining about, dead children because we want to be victims and have benefits? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is the exaggerated, generalized response to it, to me, tastes a little bit like that. As I said, with all due respect, whatever happened, whatever bad things happened, they shouldn't have happened. And I'm sorry for it, but it wasn't me. And it wasn't my wife, and it wasn't my children, and it wasn't my parents. Okay, so don't tell me that I have to not be celebrating Canada Day or Dominion Day because of this, because I'm supposed to be ashamed? No. I'm proud to be Canadian because as a Canadian, I can look unflinchingly at past historical injustices and make corrections where they need to be made if necessary.
Let's assume that this is the worst case scenario for just a second. I don't think it is. I think there's way too many questions that need to be answered, and we don't have anywhere near enough information to make any kind of decision. So I won't even say I don't think it is. We just don't know. But what about all the great things this country's done? All the marvelous advances we've made in medicine and science and culture, on the battlefield, all these things, are they all washed away now because of this? Are we supposed to forget all that? And when I say just, I don't mean to diminish, I'm not trying to diminish the event, but I'm saying when you put those things in perspective, when you drop the residential schools nightmare on one side of the scale and the massive amounts of good this country has done and the number of times it's reached out to other countries to help them in their times of difficulty, the scale drops like a lead balloon on the side of we're a far better country than we are a bad one. And there's still thousands of things to be proud of about this country, in spite of its leadership, in spite of Kamloops, in spite of all this other nonsense. And I'm tired of having my nose rubbed in this, because you're right. I didn't do it. You didn't do it. My dad didn't do it. Your dad didn't do it. Neither did our grandparents. So I'm not responsible for it. And I'm tired of being made to feel that I am.
Well, you took the words right from my mouth, Nick.
Well, that just means we're on the same side.
And it's funny. We usually are. Anyway,
normally.
I'm sorry. I got a little hot under the collar there because I'm sick to death of this. We're surrounded by children, and that react childishly. I'm sorry. I know that some people out there are going to be upset and offended by this, but, what do you want me to say? Stop. It's like people don't think anymore. They emote. they just feel and they express their feelings. And I don't dismiss people's feelings, but just remember that they're feelings, okay? So, and what we have to do is we have to stop feeling so much, having our actions dictated to by our feelings, and start using our head a little bit, okay? Using your heart is a good thing, but you have to use your head as well. And sometimes your head has to tell the heart, "Hey, slow down there, buddy. Just chill out."
Well, Your heart is your engine, but your head is your rudder.
Oh.
And an engine in a ship without a rudder
There's
run up on the rocks sooner or later.
There is a very interesting analogy. Well put, Nick. Well put.
You like that one, do you?
I did. I
made that up all on my own. I'm taking credit for that one.
Anyway, my safety relief valve popped, and now my pressure is returning to normal. So it's a good time for us to head off to a break. And when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk a little bit about the CBC and whether or not we should be getting rid of the CBC, and if we're going to get rid of it, how we go about doing that. So stick around, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be back in a few minutes on the Nick and Joe Show on the Think Radio Broadcast Network.